So nice to see you all here in our Colgrass expanded living room. Neil mentioned that some of you come from far away, others are our neighbors, and you all had a part in Michael's incredibly varied 87 years of life. He met everybody with the same warmth and interest, whether they were colleagues, family, students, staff in our condo building, or his favorite bank teller, Sarah, she's also here. You'll probably hear a lot today about Michael's professional talents, so I have chosen to tell you a bit about his private life. When Michael and I met in Copenhagen many years ago, he was on a Guggenheim Fellowship, and I was a journalist immersed in the local art scene. We seemed to know each other from the start. In fact, when he first set foot in my little apartment in Copenhagen, I had some music on, Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, and he listened in the doorway and said, that's me playing. As he did on all his Stravinsky recordings as a percussionist. And he also told me that I had bought a pirated recording in East Berlin. We had much in common, and we had both traveled extensively, and we'd been around the block, as they say. And above all, we did not want to get married. Yet we were together for the next 52 years. I can attest to the fact that when you marry a composer, you get 2 for 1. There was the lover you drank wine and played tennis with, and there was the artist who lived in his private garden. I did not enter that area, but I did throw some fertilizer over the fence, knowing what inspired him, and it wasn't the 12-tone row. It was books, films, poetry, ethnic music, nature, theater, painting, dance. It was all part of his world. Michael always worked at home. Art is created in solitude. Friends had a romantic notion of the beautiful sounds emanating from his studio, but in truth it sounded more like a piano tuner trapped in the attic. He always divided his studio into a music side and a writing side to suit his ever-expanding life. Shortly after I moved to New York City to be with Michael in 1966, he decided to give up playing and wanted to just compose. At the time, I worked for composer Milton Babbitt at Columbia University, and he said, "My dear, don't you know there's not a single composer in America who makes a living from composing?" No, I didn't. And Michael actually proved Milton wrong, because he worked 7 days a week, and he also thought a composer should make as much as a plumber. So we spent a year traveling in Europe together, where Michael studied performing arts on a Rockefeller grant. That included acting, ballet, singing, fencing, commedia dell'arte, because with more tools he felt he could expand his world of music. In the States, we divided our lives between a rent-controlled apartment on Riverside Drive and our house on a mountainside in New Jersey. A frugal existence for sure, but we decided to splurge on one extravagance, a child. So Neil was born in Hackettstown, and he immediately became our best friend. Others will talk today about Michael as a composer. Yes, he wrote original and sophisticated works for the Toronto Symphony, the New York Philharmonic, and the Boston Symphony, but I think his most successful role in life was as a father. He kept his childlike imagination throughout life, and Neil gave him a real boost. We did exert some discipline, but the main goal was to share a joy of life with this new being, and was it ever noisy? After we moved to Toronto in 1974, our house on Palmerston would often be shaking with kids, and Michael included, roaring from floor to floor, jumping out of closets, A favorite trick was Michael's commedia dell'arte skills of somersaulting down the stairs with just a push of a child's finger. Squeak, bang, screams of delight. Every day at 5 o'clock, kids would gather on the front porch because it was time for Michael to take them to the park to play. Sometimes Michael was deep. Oh, you find that funny? No. Well, it's perfectly normal for him. Sometimes Michael was deep into his work, and he tried to ignore Neil's pleading. Mike, it's 5 o'clock, we are waiting. Neil, not now, give me 5 minutes. And I then heard Neil's piercing little voice singing, Old MacDonald Had a Farm. And that broke the spell, and the ball games could begin. My boys, as I called them, continued to entertain me with their hijinks for years to come. Our domestic life was perhaps odd for that time. We never had a car, for instance, and biked everywhere. We had plenty of big informal parties and many house concerts. For 7 years, we had open house every Sunday afternoon in the wintertime, with various artists presenting their work, all self-generated by the rich supply in Toronto of musicians, painters, writers, sculptors, filmmakers, architects, dancers, and others who participated. And it was a wonderful education. Our life was simple. It focused on the basics of having a home with enough space to work and the time and money to do it. Lots of good food and wine was essential to satisfy Michael's Italian roots. He didn't care much about knowing the right people or about what the Joneses had. Clothes was Michael's least concern. He once waited for me outside a store on Bloor Street and removed his cap to enjoy the sunshine, and a person walked by and dropped some coins in the cap. Michael thought that was very funny too. While in Toronto, Michael's world continued to expand. He was commissioned to write works mostly from orchestras and ensembles in the States, but he gradually gained acceptance in Canada. Though he claimed that artists are citizens of the world, he officially became a dual Canadian-American citizen and embraced his new country full on. He traveled in the Maritimes, camped in Algonquin Park, spent a month living with an Inuit family in Baffin Island, and was dropped into the bush of northern Saskatchewan and had to canoe back to civilization. We weren't joined at the hip, but we would travel sometimes together, sometimes apart, summers in Bali, trips to Europe, building a cabana at the edge of the jungle in Belize, and safaris in Africa. Music was a core element for Michael since he formed his first band at age 11. He played jazz for years and was inspired by many musical styles from around the world. He also wrote poems and books and became fascinated by neurolinguistic programming. In fact, he was the creative model for NLP and studied it seriously to use these techniques in therapy and workshops. Over the years, he cured many performers of stage fright and other phobias. Students were always welcome to our house to learn and to eat and to stay overnight, whatever worked out. Here's a final story about Michael's creative universe. Using his skill as a therapist, he decided to hypnotize an entire audience and to help enhance their listening to a string quartet. He worked on an inconspicuous script about childhood that he knew would put the audience into a hypnotic state. And he programmed them to come out when the music finished. I was there and saw the audience sink into stillness. Then the musicians walked on stage. I assumed they would not be able to play Debussy if they were hypnotized. The whole thing came off without a hitch. Not a cough, not a muscle moved. And people raved about how much they had enjoyed the music, and none suspected they had been hypnotized. Only Bill Littler, the music critic, cottoned on to it, and Michael was thrilled. I won't go on here. Others will want to talk and play. I'm sure Michael is enjoying this afternoon with us, so speak truthfully and play in tune.